right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this introduction to iNaturalist. My name is Amy Jaker-Jones, and I'm a coordinator in the Community Science Program at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. We have two other staff members joining us today for this program, and I'm going to introduce them in just a minute and let them share their favorite animal with you. For me, it's hard to pick a favorite animal. I really love bees and wasps. They've got such amazing colors and patterns. Some of them are even so small that you need a microscope to see them clearly. So I'm going to introduce Michelle Race now. Michelle, tell us about yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Michelle Race. I'm a manager in the Community Science Program office. It's so hard to choose a favorite animal, but my background is in marine biology, so I'm going to have to go with something in the ocean, and my all-time favorite animal are killer whales, orcas.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Karina Domingo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karina Domingo, and I'm a Community Science Program coordinator here at the museum, and I'd have to say my favorite animal is probably a mountain lion.
Great. Thank you, Karina. So I'm going to take a brief moment to talk about what we'll be teaching in this webinar. Michelle will be explaining what community science is, why it's important for the museum and our scientists. Next, I'll be demonstrating how to use the iNaturalist mobile app on the iPhone and talking about it on the Android as well, because there are a few differences. Karina will be talking about wildlife photography and sharing some tips on how to take good photos for science. We will share how to do all of this safely during COVID-19, because your health and the health of our whole community is just of the utmost importance. First, we've got a little bit of housekeeping. Only presenters will have the ability to use their microphones and cameras. Feel free to ask questions at any time using the Q&A function. Depending upon the question, we'll either answer it right away or hold it till the end. Please interact with program monitors and moderators and each other in a respectful manner. And if you need to leave early at any time, that's fine. We'll be sending out a recording after the event. I want to talk about safety right away. iNaturalist is great for making observations in the safety of your own home. We really hope that you'll find it fun and rewarding to do so. All of these pictures right here were taken by Leela Higgins, our Senior Manager of Community Science at the museum. And she took all of them after the Safer at Home order had already been in place. So this picture on the left shows a brown widow egg sac from her garage. She found this little fly on her porch, and she found the mourning dove feather out in the front yard. We know that not everybody has a yard you can use, and not everybody has the ability to take walks in your neighborhood right now, and that's okay. You can make a lot of observations in your home, even looking outside of windows. If you are able to take a walk in your neighborhood, we just want to talk about some safety measures that you can do. Make sure that you are practicing social distancing with people outside of your household, making sure there's at least 6 feet in between you and others. Wear a cloth face mask while you're out, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds when you get home. It's actually a good practice to wash your hands when you've been exploring nature anyway, so that shouldn't be any different in this time. Here we are using our face masks and making nature observations. Now I want to take a quick audience poll. If you were an animal, would you rather fly, swim, or burrow? I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. If you are watching on a browser, you may not actually see the poll. Feel free to answer in the chat box. So people have started to vote. Right now, flying has the lead, but we've got some answers for burrowing also. We've got about 60% of people who have voted right now. Okay, up to 73%. Go ahead and put in your answer if you haven't already done so. All right, so most people want to fly. One person wants to burrow and nobody wants to swim, which actually surprises me. I've never seen anybody not want to be a swimmer. But what's great about people is we all have different ideas. Another thing that we'd like to know is if you're watching this program with youth today, it helps us in our program reporting. Just tell us in the chat box what ages of the people in your household are. Thank you very much for sharing with us. And now I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, who's going to talk about community science.
Okay, let me just share my screen. And while I'm getting that set up, I wanted to swim, but then Jasmine pointed out in the chat that we are already animals that can swim. So that's a fair point, Jasmine. Okay, let me just pull up my screen here. Okay. So the first thing that we want to talk about is what is community science? So we have this definition here that comes from the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology. So it says projects in which volunteers partner with scientists to answer real world questions. And that's true for us here at the museum as well. So at the Natural History Museum, our scientists partner with volunteers in Los Angeles to learn about urban nature, which is wildlife that we can find in cities. And this is actually extremely important. We really need you and all the volunteers in Los Angeles because, as you all are probably very familiar, Los Angeles is a really big place and a lot of it can be private property or in backyards. And we really know that the people that live in these neighborhoods are the experts of their areas. So we need all of you, every citizen, every community member in Los Angeles to tell us what they see in their backyards. So before we jump fully into how to use iNaturalist, we want to know, what's your experience level for using iNaturalist? So again, we're going to do a poll, and Amy's going to pull that up for us. And there are 3 options. So you may be a beginner, you haven't used iNaturalist before, maybe it's intermediate, you've used it a little bit, you're familiar with the basic features, or you're advanced. You've been using iNaturalist for a while and you're familiar with most of the features. So again, as we did before, the poll might come up for you, and if it doesn't, you can put that in the chat box. So just give that a couple of seconds, maybe a minute. All right, it looks like we have a lot of beginners, few intermediate. We have someone who's advanced. Thanks for joining us. Okay. Like almost everyone is answered. Most people are beginners. Give it a few more seconds. All right. Okay, so it looks like we're sharing those results. It looks like most of us are beginners, some are intermediate, and someone here is advanced. We're going to try to be as comprehensive as we can be in doing this tutorial for you all on how to use iNaturalist. So for our beginners, it'll definitely be a great place to start. And if you're more advanced or used it before, I think we're going to give you some pro tips that can maybe improve your practice. So thanks for joining us. Okay, so we'll start very basic. What is iNaturalist? And it's basically a social network for naturalists and scientists. And like other social media platforms, what you're doing is uploading content. And in this case, the content is pictures of things that you see outside. So you take a picture of it, you can upload it to iNaturalist, and you're sharing it with other people who have this interest. So other naturalists and scientists who might know what that wildlife is. They can help you identify it. You can help them identify what they find. You can ask each other questions, and really it's social media for people that love nature. And at the museum, we have several community science projects. The ones that are kind of highlighted there in a blue circle are the ones that are used with iNaturalist. So we're going to focus on those. The one up there on the top row is the LA Nature Map. And that's really a repository of all the things that people find in Los Angeles. So if you're finding ladybugs and beetles and birds and everything that you see, you can upload that to the LA Nature Map and it's there for everyone to look at. The 3 there on the bottom are pretty specific to certain animals. So the first project there on the bottom is called RASCALS. It's an acronym, so we love our acronyms here. And that is Reptiles and Amphibians of Southern California. So if you see any lizards or snakes or anything like that, you can take a picture of it, upload it to iNaturalist, and add it to that project. The one there in the bottom middle is called SLIME, which is snails and slugs living in metropolitan areas. So if you see any snails or slugs, you can add it to that project. And the last one there on the bottom is the Southern California Squirrel Survey. No acronym there, but if you see any squirrels, we're interested in that. So you can take a picture of it, upload it, and add it to that project. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Amy now because we have a big project that you can help us out with, which is called the City Nature Challenge.
Thanks, Michelle. So the City Nature Challenge is a big project that I work on, and it's happening this weekend. We hope that you'll all participate. City Nature Challenge is an international event where cities compete to see who can share the most nature. But this year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we've made a really big change to it. It's no longer a competition. Instead, we'll have over 200 cities around the world all collaborating to share their nature observations so that they can be used by researchers, scientists, urban planners, and policymakers. Because most people will be making their observations in or near their homes, this is actually an even better than usual opportunity for us to capture urban nature and really find out what's happening in the most urban environments in Los Angeles and other cities. So the challenge will begin at 12:01 a.m. on Friday, April 24th, and run through 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 27th. Here's how you can participate. Look for wild plants and animals in your yard and in your neighborhood. So wild plants and animals will be things that are not captive or cultivated. A captive animal is going to be an animal that lives in your house or at a zoo. Cultivated plants are going to be those that were planted or maintained by people. Most of the plants in Los Angeles are going to be cultivated, but weeds are not. That's pretty much the exception to the neighborhood cultivated plant rule. Weeds just kind of spring up wherever and they're not intentionally put there by people. Next thing you do is you take photos of what you're finding and then share those observations on iNaturalist. I'm going to go ahead and start a demo of how to use the app on my phone. While I'm getting that set up, let me tell you that there are a few differences between how the app works on the iPhone versus the Android. And so I'm going to be showing it on an iPhone, and then I'll be talking about the Android afterwards. So right now I'm opening up iNaturalist. You should be able to see my screen now. And this is the observations page that I first see when I open it up. The navigation features for it are going to be on the bottom. You'll see those icons there with descriptions. The first one I want to highlight is under More. So I'm going to click on that in the bottom right corner, and then I click on Projects. Here you can see all the different projects that we have at the museum. We hope that you'll join those. You can search for projects, including featured projects. You can see that right down here, City Nature Challenge 2020 is listed as a featured project in iNaturalist. You can search for projects that are nearby, or right where I've got that spinning wheel up in the top corner of my phone, it just means it's moving really slowly right now. There's usually a magnifying glass, and you can use that to search for projects by name. So let's go ahead, now that you know a little bit about projects, and talk about adding an observation. I click on the camera icon in the bottom of my screen for Observe, and this starts a new observation. I can either take a photo right now, go ahead and go forward with my observation without a photo, or I can choose from my camera roll. I'm going to go ahead and choose my camera roll right now, and then I go to my photographs and select my first photo. I go ahead and click on Next, and this adds the observation or the photograph to my observation. I'd like to add another photograph, so I go to the top left corner and click on the plus sign, and back to my camera roll, selecting my second photo, and clicking Next. You can add as many photographs to an observation as you feel necessary to really describe that plant or animal, whatever you're seeing. Next, you can click on the question mark for what did you see, and this brings up suggestions through the iNaturalist artificial intelligence system. There's going to be usually a broad suggestion, like a very general suggestion near the top. In this case, it says honeybees, and then you'll usually have top 10 species suggestions below that. I'm typically, when using this, looking for something that is visually similar or seen nearby. That tells me that it might be the animal that I photographed. I can get more information about the suggestions, though, by clicking on the eye and the circle just next to it. And now I'm looking, I can see a description of the honeybee, I can see a map where observations have come in, and even go to iNaturalist to get more information. Right now I'm clicking back to go to the suggestions. So I want to let you know that it's okay if you don't really know a lot about the suggestion it's giving you and you don't feel comfortable choosing one of them. You can always put in a really broad category like plant or bird by clicking on the magnifying glass and just typing that in. Other people in iNaturalist will offer suggestions for you for identification. And so we always encourage people to be conservative and just make an ID as much as you're reasonably sure of it. I'm pretty sure this is the Western honeybee, so I'm going to go ahead and select it. Underneath that are notes, and this is an optional field. People will often write in information about the weather for that day, behavior that they witnessed in animals. You can tag another user on iNaturalist by typing @ and then their username. Underneath that, the date and the time automatically load, as well as the location, as long as you have your location services turned on your phone and in your photo setting. We really recommend that you do that because location is one of the most crucial pieces that our scientists need for their research projects. Having an accurate location is very important to them. For the most part, when you're doing this in the city, the location information is going to be pretty accurate. You can actually click on location though to take you to a map. And I'm going to go ahead and just move the crosshairs over to this bush in our nature gardens at the museum because that's where I actually spotted this honeybee. And then I click on save. Beneath that is geoprivacy, and that's something I want to take a moment to talk about because this is where you control who sees the locations for your observations. Open is the default setting, and it's what I use in most cases, especially if I'm at a park, on a trail, or at the museum. It means anyone anywhere can see the actual location where this observation was made. When I'm at home, I use obscured, and what that does is it saves the true location of the observation. And if I've added it to a project, then project curators will still be able to see that location, but the public won't. What iNaturalist will do is make a dot, place it on a map randomly within 10 kilometers of where the observation was actually made. So you're hiding the specific location of your home from the general public. Beneath that is private, and this is something that just absolutely locks down the location information. You won't actually have people seeing the observation at all, so you won't get feedback or identifications on it. So we don't really recommend you use private. Instead, if you're at home, use obscured. Because this was taken at the museum though, I'm going to keep it at open and click done. We talked a little bit about captive and cultivated earlier. When I click on this, it gives me two options, no and yes. So in this case, the honeybee is a wild organism. I would go ahead and keep it at yes. But if you did have an observation of a city tree, you would consider that to be cultivated and you would change that answer to yes. I think I misspoke a minute ago. I'm going to keep the honeybee at no and click done because it is not captive or cultivated. It's okay to put in observations that are captive or cultivated. There are a lot of different ways that people use iNaturalist. It's just important to mark that when you do so. That way the scientists can actually filter out that data when they're working on their projects. Lastly, you can add your observation to a project. So when I click on projects, it shows the projects that I've already joined. You can only add observations to those projects that you have joined already. And you can add it to as many projects as you like, as long as your observation meets the criteria for each project. We always encourage people to read a little bit about the projects that they join, so you know what specific taxons or groups and types of animals or plants would qualify for it, but also find out who's running the project and what the goals of it are, since you will be sharing your location data with those projects. I'm going to add it to LA Nature Map and click the back arrow. The last step is to click on Share. And I'm going to click on Me right now because I want to go back to my observation page. And you can see this observation is loading. iNaturalist tends to be heavy on data and battery usage. So sometimes I change it in my settings so that I have to upload it manually, not just automatically. You can play around with the different settings in your phone setting, but also going to the app settings by clicking on the gear in the top right corner here. And you can see I have it set to automatic upload right now. Last thing I want to show you on my phone is how to check your activity. You click on the bell on the bottom for activity, you'll see identifications that people have made on our observations. Clicking on the bottom one, several people have identified this observation as the spotless lady beetle. I would encourage you to check your activity maybe a couple hours after you made an observation, or maybe even a few days or weeks afterwards, because sometimes I'm getting people making identifications on observations that I made 3 or 4 years ago. So there's a lot of feedback back and forth about that. I'm going to go ahead and switch to slides now because I want to talk about the Android phone. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit different on the Android versus the iPhone, as we're going to cover some of those differences here. In terms of navigating on the Android, you'll be looking for the menu bar up in the top left corner, and when you click on that, you'll see a list of the features here that come down in a drop-down menu. You can use the menu bar to find projects, and then when you click on projects, you can see the different ones you've joined. You can search for nearby projects, featured projects, or use the magnifying glass to search by name. When you're ready to make an observation, you're going to look for this plus sign in the bottom right corner. You click on that and you'll start your observation. So you can, again, go without a photograph. You can take a photo right in the moment, or you can choose an image from your camera roll. Android phones also have this great feature that I really wish iPhones had, where you can choose to record a sound right in the moment or select a recording that you already have in your phone's library. This is something I do with birds a lot. If I'm not able to take a picture, I record a sound and I upload it. I go ahead and I upload it on the website since my iPhone can't do it, but you can do that right in the app on the Android. Then you will click on OK if you like the image you've taken. If you want to add more pictures, you can click on the camera in the top left corner. You can click on the question mark for what do you see to have all the suggestions loaded. In order to find out more about each suggestion, you can click on the arrows for more information, and you can click on the check mark in order to select that suggestion. Feel free to enter in as many notes as you'd like or to leave that blank. You can talk about weather, behavior, number of individuals, or you can tag another user on iNaturalist. The date and time will automatically load as well as the location. And then on the Android, for privacy, what they call it is location visibility. So you'll have those same three options: open, obscured, and private. For captive and cultivated, this time it's a check mark box. So if you are putting an observation of something that is captive or cultivated, it might be a city tree, just go ahead and check on that box, and then the scientists will be able to know whether something was growing wildly or if it's a cultivated plant. Add it to projects. Again, we would love for you to participate in our NHM projects, LA Nature Map, Rascals, Slime, and the Southern California Squirrel Survey. Then when you're ready to share your observation, click on the check mark in the top right corner. And then again, you can change your settings to either upload right away or upload later. To check activity, you'll go to the menu bar in the top left corner, and then the drop-down menu, you click on activity, and again, you can see where people are making identifications on your observations. iNaturalist has a really wonderful website and has even more features available than you can do on your phone. It's something I use quite often. On it there, you can find a lot of helpful resources as well, including video tutorials, teacher's guides, a forum, and then you can always get in touch with them personally through email or tagging them on social media. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to Karina, and she's going to talk about taking wildlife photographs.
All right, thank you, Amy. So knowing how to take good quality photos for science is really an integral part of being a community scientist. And I also think it's one of the most fun parts. So we're going to go over some pro tips on photographing wildlife so you guys can make the best of your observations in your home or around your neighborhood during COVID-19 and for City Nature Challenge. We're going to be covering capturing the moment, focus, angles, shade, and other camera tips. And after that, I'll hand it off to Michelle, and she'll talk about how to look for wildlife as well as safety. And so I really love this picture. So let's try to bring ourselves to this moment. You're walking down the street and you come across a lizard. And some of you may want to take the time to get the perfect lighting and get a really artistic photo. But first, we really just want you to whip out your camera and immediately capture the moment. So getting that first photograph of the animal is really important. This is the first piece of evidence that you documented this animal at this location at this time. And this is really a crucial data point for scientists. And so can you see the lizard in this photo? As you approach the animal, you'll want to continue to take pictures. And if you're lucky enough, you'll be able to take a good quality photo of the animal that you see here. And this is a great photo. So you may, at this point, you may even be able to see, you know, ticks or other parasites on the lizard. You should be able to identify it by species, or a museum scientist can help you do that. And so be sure to capture the moment, and you don't always have to get a close up, but if you can, that's great. For focus, you want to take clear, crisp images of the species you encounter. To do that on your phone, you can tap the screen when you're in your camera setting, and that should allow you to focus on the part of the image that you want crisp. And also, sometimes if you're too close or too far away, it won't focus, so try moving your camera back or forth from the object. The photo on the left is blurry, but technically you could upload that to iNaturalist. We could clearly see it's a lizard. On the right-hand side, that's a kind of a better quality photo that we would like uploaded. But remember, capture the moment, and even if you just get a blurry photo, we still encourage you to add that onto iNaturalist. Be sure to take pictures of the different angles. So these are the different angles we would really like to see of a snail, and our malacologist likes to have these 3 angles so she could identify the animal to species. You can also take pictures of different parts of a plant. That's really important. And shade. So shade is your friend. This is a pro tip. Making your own shade with like a hat or a scarf or an umbrella is an easy way to do this. This could really help to reduce glare, especially on water. So on the left-hand side, you see that it's a nudibranch in a tide pool, but it's kind of difficult to see maybe what species it is. And so the person that took this picture, they took their hat off and they shaded the tide pool and snapped the photo you see on the right-hand side of the screen. And this is perfect. Remember to capture the moment though. Keep in mind that many insects and lizards may flee if you try to shade them. So you can look out for that. Getting to know your camera, we talked about focus, but another important thing is exposure. So if the image is overexposed or too bright, or underexposed or too dark, most phones allow you to, again, tap the screen when you're in your in your camera settings, when you're going to take a picture, and on an iPhone, a yellow square pops up, and just outside of that square is a sun, a little yellow sun, and if you move your finger up, the image will get brighter, and if you move your finger down, the image will get darker. I have an Android, so on the Android phones, you'll have your slider on the bottom, and you can go from left or right to make the picture brighter or darker. Cropping and zoom is another important one. But using the zoom function on your camera phone can really decrease the quality of the image. So we really encourage you all to first take that photo and then crop it and then add it to iNaturalist, as opposed to trying to use the zoom function. The last one I think is really fun is waterproofing. So getting to know your other capabilities on your device is great. Read your manual if you still have it. A lot of camera phones now are actually waterproof. And so you can see this person in this photo dunking their camera phone underwater and getting underwater observations. So I think that's pretty neat. And I'm going to hand it off to Michelle now, and she's going to chat with you guys about how to look safely for wildlife and how to find wildlife.
Awesome, thanks, Karina. Share my screen once again. All right, so we're gonna kind of wrap up today talking about how to find wildlife, and then at the end, we'll talk about how we can stay safe while we're doing it. So first things first, now that we know how to use iNaturalist and how to take great pictures, how do we find this wildlife? And when we're thinking about that question, what we're really asking ourselves is, what is their habitat? So that means 3 things. We're looking for places that can be shelter, places that have water, and places that have food. And if you can find those 3 things, then you're likely to be in a spot where you can find wildlife. Something that's really important is that when we're looking around, we want to make sure that we're also looking up, because there's some animals that fly, like some of you said you wanted to do, or that climb trees. So in the example pictures we have here, if you're looking up, you might see squirrels in a tree. You might be able to find nests and birds or hives. And these are all great things that we can make observations of that are above us. And if we're looking up, of course, we have to look down because there's some animals that spend most of their time on the ground or underground. So again, in these examples, you can see there that some habitat might be underneath a rock or like a stone slab. So I'll give you a pro tip here, actually. If you're lifting that up, you want to lift it up kind of towards you and stand behind it. In case there's anything under there that might want to get away, they'll go in the opposite direction. So you can kind of poke around under there, see what you find, and then when you're done, put that rock or stone slab back where you found it. Or in the other image, if you're looking on the underside of leaves, that could be another place where you might find some wildlife. And kind of as we mentioned before, and as you all are very aware, we're going to be in our homes a lot. So this is an opportunity for us to see what's inside with us. So if you want to look around, you can find something maybe in the corners or in the cupboards inside your home. Another great thing to do is just kind of sit at a window. I've been really lucky in my living room. I have a pretty great window and my neighbor has a bird feeder. So on the weekends, I'll kind of sit there and see what birds come throughout the day. So those are all really great places to look while you're inside your home. And if you want to, if you're interested, you can also bring wildlife to you. So as I mentioned, my neighbor feeds the birds. And so if you install a bird feeder, that's one great way to bring animals to you. You can also make observations at night. There are animals that are attracted to light. So if you set up something like a moth light, you can make observation of those if they come by. And then the last example we have here is relatively simple. It's a cover board. So that just means you're putting down a piece of plywood or like a thick piece of cardboard, and you're laying that on the ground and that becomes shelter. And so if you leave it there for a while, wildlife might find its way there. You can come back and check and see what you find. Okay, so as we mentioned at the top and all the way through, we want to make sure that we're being really safe. And this is year round all the time. We want to make sure that we're keeping ourselves and wildlife safe. So you can see in the background image here that this person is making an observation of a spider. And they're doing it in a way that keeps themselves safe. They're at a distance because maybe they're not sure what kind of spider this is, or they just want to keep their distance. And it's also safe for that spider because its habitat might be its web. So we don't want to disrupt the habitat that that animal is living in. Okay, and then this is pertinent for right now, right? We mentioned it before, but we want to be safe during the time of coronavirus. And so that means staying at home. But as I mentioned, you can make observations indoors. You can make observations from your windows or from your deck or right in the front of your house. You can make observations in your yard if you have one. And you can also make observations on a neighborhood walk if that's something that you're able to do. So I just want to show you some examples that our team has taken observations during the time of COVID-19. So it's possible to do. The three images that you see here were taken indoors. So these are all things that kind of found their way inside, and then we took some pictures of them. This image is of a hummingbird's nest that was taken by another one of our community science managers, Miguel Ordeñana. He took a picture of this nest from inside of his home, which is great, right? As a reminder, it's a great way for him to stay safe, but it's also safe for that nest because we're finding any nests right now. We don't want to disturb them. And then of course, if you have some outdoor space, if you're lucky to have something like that here in LA, that's another place to just spend some time and see what you can find, like this wasp nest or this reptile. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for us. I think we're all going to come back here and see if there are any questions that we can try to answer.
All right, thank you, Michelle. So I don't see any questions in our chat box or in the Q&A quite yet, but maybe we'll give people a minute and Amy can continue to talk about tools and maybe perhaps the City Nature Challenge.
Great, thank you, Karina. Yes, we want everybody to participate in the City Nature Challenge. Earlier in the program, we talked about adding observations to projects, and that's kind of an older way to use iNaturalist. A lot of the early projects you actually had to add your observations to. Or you may notice if you've been using iNaturalist for a while, sometimes somebody in our office will find a great snail or slug observation that you made and we'll add it to the project also and let you know that we've done so. But iNaturalist has a different type of project called a collection project, which is what the City Nature Challenge is. And that means anytime you make an observation this weekend, as long as you're in Los Angeles County, it's going to automatically be added to the City Nature Challenge. So you don't have to worry about adding that in. They're going to just show up there automatically. And our project does include all of Los Angeles County. So wherever you live in Los Angeles County, when you're making those observations at home, they will be included. Okay, so no questions right now. I'm going to go ahead and talk about some tools. If you joined us right away when the program started and you were waiting for us to begin, I was showing some tools that we use in the community science office. Of course, first of all, our phone is the most important tool. And then a lot of us use these little clip-on lenses. You can just put this on the back of your camera and take a really nice close-up photo of an insect or something else. Sometimes I use this on plants as well to get really detailed images of the hairs on the stems or the leaves.
Amy, we do have a question coming in from Irene. They're asking, is there a best time of day to spot critters?
It kind of depends upon the type of animal. So we all know the early bird gets the worm, and I say the early birder gets the observations. So if you're out there early in the morning, you're more likely to spot birds. But then just as the sun is starting to come up and warm your back, that's when the insect activity really gets going. And so that the middle of the day when it's sunny is a really great time to spot insects. There are some animals that are dawn and dusk animals like coyotes. So you're going to see them a little bit more towards the beginning or the end of the day. And Karina mentioned some nocturnal insects as well. And then there are bats you might see if you happen to be outside at a park. Sometimes they're flying around to the lights. Opossums and raccoons you might spot. Some people even are surprised when they look at their security cameras and see wildlife crossing in front, things that they didn't even know were in their neighborhood. So that's another tool you can actually use to look for wildlife. Do you guys have any additional tips for when to look?
I think it just really depends on what animals you're interested in. And so there's something to see kind of all day, like all day and all night. So I think that it really just depends on what your interests are. And for me, you know, loving mammals, there are certain mammals that, you know, I would only see probably at dusk and dawn. So I think it just depends on what you're interested in. We do have another question coming in from Connie, and maybe Michelle can answer this one. Connie's asking, do you want images of native cultivated plants or just insects and animals?
That is a great question. We take observations of everything. So if something is cultivated, you can go ahead and take a picture of that. As Amy mentioned, when you're uploading it to iNaturalist, there's an option there to mark it as cultivated. So that way we know. And then if there's anything cultivated that you're taking a picture of, but things are being drawn to it like insects, then you can also take a picture and observations of those as well. So I think everything that you see is fair. Any other thoughts about that, Amy or Karina?
No, I think that's great.
I think that's great.
Cool.
There are a couple more questions here.
All right.
So Irene asks, what are each of the projects going to be used for, Rascals and the others? Are the results going to be published? Well, actually, there have already been some results published for our projects. There have been new county and even, I think, state records for some of the snails and slugs or geckos. And if you look up our curator's names, Jan Vendetti runs our snail and slug project, and you can look for her publications. Greg Pauley is our herpetologist. So anything relating to reptiles, amphibians is going to be his area of expertise. So they're publishing all the time.
Yeah, and you can, just to add one more thing, Amy, you can also go to the community science landing page on the Natural History Museum website, and there's a lot of those discoveries highlighted there on that page. And we are almost out of time, so we're 2 minutes till 45 minutes. If anybody has another question. I think we answered them all, you guys.
Awesome. Let me just use that last minute to do a speed round of tools. So we've got binoculars. You can even take a picture through the binoculars. Takes a little practice, but gives you a nice big image. Sometimes we collect things in a butterfly net and we put them into a little bug jar so we can take pictures of them and look at them closely. You can also use a clear plastic bag if you don't have a bug jar to do the same thing. If you want to record how big something was, like an animal track or a piece of scat, you can put a ruler down next to it. You can also put a penny down, and that will record the scale, which helps with that identification. And the last thing we use is a plastic spoon, which you can dig in leaf litter or in the soil to find out what kind of organisms are living there. All right, thanks everybody. We are so glad that you were able to join us today. Once again, we hope you'll participate in this weekend's City Nature Challenge and all of our ongoing community science projects at the Natural History Museum. If you have any questions, feel free to email us, nature@nhm.org, and we'd be happy to chat with you. Thanks again and have a good week.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.